Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we have reached the Four Nations break in the NHL, which means we've got to talk about a little bit of news leading up to the Four Nations Faceoff, and we're also going to preview all four teams for the Faceoff, who are our favorites, and who are some dark horses to win this tournament. Guys, thank you for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports. And make sure you comment down below with what you guys think of the upcoming Four Nations Face-Off. Are you excited for you? Are you hyped for it? Are you going to the Four Nations Face-Off in Montreal or Boston? Tom, I know maybe you could possibly be going, but hit up the comment section down below. We really love for you guys to join the conversation there. Hit the like button if you also like what we are putting out and what we're talking about. And hit the bell notification so that way you guys know when our content goes live as well. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. And we have reached the Four Nations break, the much-awaited Four Nations break for some of us, including myself. It's been a long time since we've had a best on best. You could say it's been 11 years, which would be true because the last time we had a true best on best was those Olympics in 2014. You want to count the World Cup in 2016? You can. I'm 50-50 on that. I really didn't like the concept of a European all-star team or a U23 best team of North American players, mostly because Team USA got hosed. Regardless, I was up there in Toronto at that tournament in 2016. Team USA was terrible, but it was still a good time. But it's nice to have four legitimate teams playing against each other now. We know it's not a true best on best. The NHL has control of it, but you want to know what? You have players from the best league in the world playing. So I don't know why people are complaining that you need this team and that team and this team and that team in it. I was listening to Frank Saravelli before on Daily Faceoff, and people were saying too, say you expanded it and put a Switzerland or a Slovenia or somebody in, and you have to play them against a stacked Team Canada. Is the game really watchable, or is that game 8-0 in the third period?
We'll get into that preview in just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, looking at Four Nations, you definitely have the four strongest nations in this tournament, not named Team Russia or Belarus at the moment. But there are definitely nations that get the snub in this one where you do have some very interesting players on those squads that we'll see in the Olympics. Teams like Switzerland, Slovenia, Germany even. All teams that kind of get snubbed, but you know what? We're not going to have to wait too long to see what those teams really have cooking in the pressure cooker right now. But we get to see the best from the US, Canada, from Sweden, and from Finland. And that is going to be really, really exciting to see. Before we get into all of that, though, teams in the NHL just before the break had to really kind of slide in with some last minute trades. And, Tom, I know you're going to have quite a bit to talk about one of these, and we previewed one of these trades a little bit in the last episode, wondering if it was going to happen, and oh my God, shocked face, it happened. Oh my God. I'm not shocked, but so trades didn't happen. I'm going to go in chronological order here. The first chip fell in the wee hours of January 31st. The Philadelphia Flyers acquired forwards Andrei Kuzmenko and Jacob Pelletier, a second-round pick in 2025, and a seventh-round pick in 2028 from the Calgary Flames for forwards Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. And this was a trade that actually really surprised me at first, but in thinking about it more, I actually really, really like, and we'll dive back into that in just a little bit. I'm going to go on to the next three trades that were announced. All of these were within 48 hours of each other, by the way. Also on January 31st, I know this is going to be the surprising trade here, guys. I don't know if you knew this, but Vancouver was shopping JT Miller. I know, shocking. And I really didn't see the New York Rangers acquiring him at all. I was really, truly shocked, surprised, shock, and awe. Anyway, the New York Rangers acquire forward JT Miller and defenseman Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington from the Vancouver Canucks for forward Philip Hedl, defenseman Victor Mancini, and a first round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. That is protected as well. That is a protected first round pick as well. On February 1st, Vancouver was not done wheeling and dealing. In fact, just a mere 24 hours later, the Vancouver Canucks acquired defenseman Marcus Pettersson and forward Drew O'Connor from the Pittsburgh Penguins for forward Danton Heinen, defenseman Vincent Desjardins, a forward prospect named Melvin Fernstrom, and a first-round pick in 2025. The same first-round pick that they acquired from the New York Rangers, in fact. So they flipped that for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. And then lastly, the Dallas Stars, knowing that they got to up their game in the Central Division and don't want to fall behind, have acquired forward Mikhail Granlund and defenseman Cody Ceci from the San Jose Sharks for a first-round pick and a third-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. Now, Tom, I know when I ask this question what the real answer is going to be from you. When I ask you what your favorite trade out of these four are, I know it's going to be JT Miller to the Rangers. However, I am going to make you work for it a little bit more, and I'll ask you, did Vancouver make the right decision not only trading JT Miller here, as well as Eric Brandstrom, who was a bit of a reclamation project for them? Did they make the right move going after Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor by flipping that first-round pick? Are they doing the right thing in trying to stay competitive in the Pacific Division right now?
I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. I think they are. And I guess if you really look at the standings here, the Pacific Division this year isn't all that strong. LA had a nice run in the beginning, but they've cooled off since. Vegas can't get out of their own way, it seems, lately. They've been dropping games here all over the place. So, they're right in the mix of it. They're only 2 points behind LA, and there's a chance that they could still they're still in a wild card spot, and there's still a very, very good chance that they could get in the third place in the Pacific Division as well. You go behind them, you have the Calgary Flames right on their tail, and then you go below them, you have the Anaheim Ducks who are sellers seemingly every year around this time. The Ducks seemingly haven't been able to figure things out since sometime in 2019. The Seattle Kraken, who, same thing, had a great year 2 years ago and aren't very good, and the San Jose Sharks, who everybody thought was going to be bad. So the Canucks are still very much in the mix. It'd be, if the Canucks were down, say, at like 45 points or whatever, I'd say, yeah, what are you doing trying to get better? But they're still very much in the thick of it. I just think tensions had boiled to a point, and I mentioned it in the last episode. The game against Nashville, JT Miller scored on a breakaway and showed no enthusiasm at all about scoring a goal or to celebrating with his teammates. He skated right off, didn't care, and that was that. I just think tensions had boiled to a head right after that, where it was like, okay, enough is enough. We got to get rid of this guy or things are going to spiral out of control. But, I mean, are you surprised at all with the Canucks? Are you surprised? You talk about, I'm a Ranger fan, and they talk about, the Rangers are dysfunctional, this, that, and the other thing. You want to look at the Vancouver Canucks? We've done episodes on them. Throughout the history of the Vancouver Canucks, they seemingly have never done anything the right way. And this is yet again another chapter of how to not run a hockey team the right way, Vancouver Canucks style. And this isn't yet another chapter. You want to go back to the Messier years. You want to go back to the AV years with the two Sedins, how they literally lost themselves a Stanley Cup in the matter of days. That team should have won. They didn't win. Or you go back to the Boudreau a couple of years ago where they brought him in as coach and then fired the president and the GM and said, we don't want to keep him. And ownership said, well, you have to keep him and we'll see what we do later on. Same thing. So the saga with the Canucks continues. It continues. As far as the draft is concerned, man, I don't know. That pick is protected if it's 13 or above. But, I mean, you look at this draft. Is it all that strong? Are scouts and GMs deeming this draft to be that strong that you took that first round pick and just threw it right away? That the Rangers you knew were going to probably have to give up the pick. And that was a big thing with them is conditions on the pick. And Vancouver, I'll add it on this with Vancouver, if we're talking about the Vancouver side of the trade. Vancouver was so high about conditions on that pick that they wouldn't make that trade in the first place a couple weeks ago. But then as soon as they get the pick, they trade it. So it's yet again another notch in the Vancouver Canucks not making any sense in anything they do.
Yeah. If you look at Daily Faceoff, which I'll project right here, I mean, on paper, Vancouver, besides that top line with Elias Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk, you look in that second line, there's a new change with Drew O'Connor on the left-hand side, Philip Hedl running center on the second line, and Brock Besser flanking on the right-hand side. That's a pretty nice second line. It's not bad. It's competitive. But overall, I'm still underwhelmed overall by this lineup. Elias Pettersson is a certified superstar. There's no doubt about that. But he needs somebody with him that is going to match his ability. And Jake DeBrusk, I think, is just a tick below that, if as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know about that. DeBrusk was a huge contributor in Boston, especially that year, last year and the year before when they had that great season. So I don't know about that. It's once you get past that line, man, really. And I'm going to tell you right now that if they can't find a way to get Brock Besser re-signed, which nothing seems to be coming of that, if he's on the board July 1st, I guarantee you he's not playing for the Vancouver Canucks next year.
Not wrong. And Jake DeBrusk, in terms of stats on this season, 33 points in 55 games played,
Yeah,
19 goals and 14 assists.
I mean, 19 goals is not too shabby on that.
No, that's not too shabby at all. And I was even going to say that's actually pretty decent. I actually didn't have him pegged at 19 goals. I haven't been keeping as close to tabs on him over this last season, admittedly. But he's matched now his goal total from last year alone in his last year in Boston. He played 80 games for the Boston Bruins last year and scored 19 goals and had 21 assists. So it's definitely a step in the right direction for him. But, you know, the real upgrade here is on defense when we look down at the defensive pairings. Marcus Pettersson slots in pretty nicely with Tyler Myers. Marcus Pettersson's a nice piece. Philip Hronek is your top defenseman right now with Quinn Hughes missing at the moment. But I want to see more from Vancouver, and I feel like they just didn't quite get the value that they needed from a guy like JT Miller. Now, on the flip side of things for the Rangers and looking at that trade and how it affected them, and like I said, we're bringing all this from Daily Faceoff. They update their line combinations daily, hourly, as they bring in more news. But JT Miller slots in immediately on that top line, can even slide down to the second line in some instances as well. First power play unit player as well. Yeah, I think JT Miller is an instant upgrade at center for the New York Rangers, who desperately needed center help with Mika Zibanejad underperforming at the moment. And I think JT Miller playing alongside Artemi Panarin in most scenarios, I think is going to be very nice. JT Miller already doing fairly decent for the New York Rangers. I'm just pulling up his stats right now from the last few games that he's played with New York. In 5 games played, he's got 2 goals, 2 assists. He's got 4 points so far as a member of the New York Rangers. He is an even at the moment. He's not a plus or a minus at the moment. But I think the Rangers are really, really hoping that he can really help turn things around. Now, Tom, now I'll finally ask you, do you like this trade for the New York Rangers?
I do. It was somebody they needed. Let me put it this way. I wasn't upset to see him go the first time. I liked him. I think people overhyped him at the time. When he had initially been traded, a lot of people were very upset and up in arms about the trade. I said at the time, the guy is averages 20 goals a year. If he was putting up the numbers he was putting up now, it'd be a little bit different. I liked the trade. It was somebody they needed. It was somebody whose name was being kicked around for a while. And the thing about the Rangers was this: it's always been kind of they need that top line center who can play in all situations. It was Zibanejad for a few years. Zibanejad's production dipped last year, and it didn't do. We were hoping that, if he was going to be the so-called second line center this year behind Trocheck, that maybe he'd find his game again. And it just hasn't seemed to happen that way. Bringing Miller back I think is a great thing. I mean, if you look at Miller after he left, he went to Tampa. He was a complimentary guy there. He had 47 points the 1 year. They moved him over to Vancouver, and then that's where he really took off. In In 1920, he had 72 points in 69 games. The COVID year will skip, but after that, it's 99, 82, and 103 points for Miller. So, I mean, it's around 90 to 100 points a year for a guy who's going to be a first-line center who the Rangers desperately need. I like the deal. They say he has an attitude, but I'll tell you what, it's a better option than they had. I'm not going to say I love Filipino. I liked Filipino. But Filipino, everyone's saying, oh, you're giving up a young asset. You're giving up a young asset. People seem to forget Filipino's been in the league 7 years now. And Filipino has averaged 30 points in those 7 years. If Hito was averaging 50 or 60, okay, no problem. In those years, Hito's only scored 20 goals once. He might do it again this year, might not. But if he was showing that he was a 20-goal scorer the last couple of years, we'd say, yeah, let's keep him around. At the same time, a 20-goal scorer one time who's been in the league 7 years to be moved for a guy who's been averaging now, 80 plus. I'm just trying to do some math, man. Who's averaging, close to 90 to 100 points a year. You have to do it. You have to do it. And it's the unfortunate part about it is Chris Drury, like I said, is being shrewd. He's trying to remake the team a little bit now, trying to remake the core, trying to see. And a lot of people are saying that, starting next year, this may be Miller and Trocheck's team. And it might not be Zibanejad and Kreider's team anymore. Miller and Trocheck may be the go-to guys in the room. Miller may have some influence in bringing players in, which I actually disagree with. I don't like that. But, if he can maybe talk, it's a stupid rumor now, can talk Brady Tkachuk into maybe asking for a trade to the Rangers at the Four Nations. I think that's a little far-fetched. But a more realistic one is a guy who I just spoke about, Brock Besser. It doesn't seem like there's much talk about him re-signing in Vancouver, at least not right now. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I've been listening to Jim Cerny, and I've been listening to various different Rangers beat reporters. And the fact of the matter is the Rangers are amassing cap space. Not to go on a rebuild like people are saying. And I'll say another thing about going on a rebuild before I go into this. So one guy told me last time, he's a Dire Devil, you guys just need to go on a rebuild. Well, if teams are throwing around first-round picks, the draft is weak this year. The drafts haven't been that great lately. I mean, not to knock on Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard has not shown that he's a generational talent. He's shown that he's a good hockey player, but he has not shown that he's a Matthews or a McDavid or even an Eichel, even an Eichel. He hasn't shown he's a Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon type player. He hasn't even shown he's an Eichel type player, even a Dylan Larkin type player.
To be fair, though, with Bedard, to play counterpoint on that one, kid still has 49 points in 55 games, and he's still 19 years old, and he's doing it for a terrible Chicago team.
Okay. Great. Granted. Now look at Austin Matthews his first year. Everybody thought the Leafs were going to get stomped. The Leafs made the playoffs his first year. Look at Crosby's second year in Pittsburgh. More of the same. Everybody thought that, it's just going to be another building year for Pittsburgh. The Penguins were in the playoffs Crosby's second year. Look at McDavid's second year in Edmonton. Oilers were in the playoffs that year after not being in for such a long time. Eichel's a little bit different because he talked his way out of where he was. McKinnon's a little bit different because it took a little while for him to come around. But I'm just saying, guys like that, if you're ranking him with guys like that, he's not doing what he needs to be doing. And you want to say a terrible Blackhawks team, but they built that roster up this year. You saw the players they brought in. We talked about it in the opening this year, before the season started, that this team might be able to take a run at a final spot. They haven't. And Bedard had the sophomore slump in November. But I want to get away from Bedard right now. Obviously, if teams are throwing around draft picks, then this draft is not that good. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. Back to Jim Cerny, back to Rangers beat reporters before he went off on the Connor Bedard tangent. The Rangers are amassing this cap space because there will be somebody there July 1st. Who will it be? We don't know. Maybe it'll be Mitch Marner. Maybe it'll be Mikko Rantanen. Because right now, and we can delve back into that later on, this Mikko Rantanen experiment in Carolina looks like a failure right now. Looks like a huge failure. Yeah. Especially after what Martin Necas is doing in Colorado. This looks like Rantanen is sulking, does not want to be there, and now we're seeing more reports come out that the Hurricanes have the worst facilities in the league amongst the 32 teams from an anonymous player survey, which makes this even look worse. And now the Canes are doing the same thing they did with Jake Getzel last year, but at least Getzel put some effort in. Rantanen's looking like he's riding it out and is going to get the hell out of there when it's all over. And there's even rumblings about the Hurricanes trading him again if they can't get to a contract.
Yeah, and for context on Natchez, which I'm glad you actually brought up because I even wanted to mention that I even said it in the last episode when the trade went down that I really liked Martin Natchez going to Colorado, and I thought that this was going to be a great move for Colorado ultimately. And boy, so far am I right, because Martin Natchez in 8 games played has 9 points in that time, 4 goals, 2 of them game winners. And he has really, really done very nicely playing alongside Nathan MacKinnon. And it really just kind of goes to show just how talented Nathan MacKinnon also is to really bring the best out of a top caliber player like Martin Natchez, because we already knew in Carolina how good Martin Natchez was. 55 points in 49 games this year. Last year in 57 games played, he had 64 points in that time. He is a guy that if he keeps playing the way he's playing, by the time he retires, he could be close to a point per game. He could be. He's got some catching up to do, admittedly. But playing alongside Nathan MacKinnon is going to certainly help get him there. And so far, he's really, really played nicely for the Colorado Avalanche and been part of the kind of turning point for Colorado in a lot of ways, too, as well. And Mikko Rantanen does seem, and maybe we're reading a little bit too far between the lines. It does seem like so far that Mikko Rantanen is currently not quite happy in Carolina, and Carolina is not quite happy with what Mikko Rantanen's been providing on the ice at the moment. But it's still fresh wounds, and this trade is still so new that it's fun to speculate right now, and it's fun to say hearsay. But I don't know if I truly see Mikko Rantanen being dealt a second time in this season.
I don't know either. I think that's a little bit of hogwash talk, but we'll see where he may wind up and if he's there July 1st. But my thing is a play it safe guy July 1st, a guy who's 27 years old and finally finding the back of the net and had his best year last year with JT Miller as his center. We spoke about him before, Brock Besser. If Besser's there July 1st, I got a funny feeling he may be priority 1 for Chris Drury to reunite them two on the top line. And then you have Trocheck and Panarin on the second line, because I was going to say before, I don't like Panarin and Miller playing together. I think they shouldn't play together. But that's another guy. That's another guy to think of. So this is just step 1 in what's trying to get done here. And I'll just harken back to Rantanen one more time. That's why when that trade happened so early, it pissed me off. Because I thought that once they got Miller, that he was going to go pedal to the floor to Colorado next and dangle Zibanejad and say, hey, you guys need a second line center, and you got this guy who you can't get re-signed. Let's swap. Let's solve each other's problems here. Yeah. Obviously not happening anymore. But it's just going to be interesting to see who's there July 1st.
Yeah. All this being said, with Vancouver and not liking the trade super duper much, they're still, as of recording right now, a wild card 2 team right now. They have 63 points in the standings right now. That's good for 3 points above the next team, which is Calgary, which is actually a perfect segue into why I kind of like this trade that Calgary made, capitalizing on a rumor that had kind of been going around Philadelphia that, hey, Philadelphia is shopping around some guys that include Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, guys that I really thought were part of Philadelphia's potential core going forward. And reading between the lines on a trade like this, there's one obvious reason why a trade like this is made for the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's giving Matvei Michkov a comfortable friend to pal around with in the locker room, and Andrei Kuzmenko. There's definitely the Russian connection there, and making sure that Matvei Michkov is as comfortable as possible as he assimilates into the NHL and to the culture of the NHL. And I think it's just a natural connection for both of them. They're not playing on the same line currently. That experiment hasn't started yet, but I would not be surprised if the next couple weeks go by as we get back into the NHL season, maybe John Tortorella starts toying around with the idea of playing Matvei Michkov and Andrei Kuzmenko on the same line together, see how they match up as a pair. But this could also be a locker room move as well. I did want to look real quick. What I found interesting with Calgary's updated lineup here, you keep Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee together on the third line, and you pair that with Yegor Sharangovich, who had a very good year last year for Calgary. And I think you give him guys that can match his speed. And I think that's a really, really nice third line all of a sudden for the Calgary Flames. All of a sudden, Calgary doesn't look so bad. And I think that there is definitely room to grow with this lineup. You've got Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee under team control for at least a year or so for both of them. Joel Farabee being 24, Morgan Frost being 25. I think that these are nice additions to the Calgary Flames here. Tom, do you agree?
I think so. It's
Not
very
world
interesting.
breaking. Not world
No,
breaking.
it's not groundbreaking. Calgary's in an interesting spot here right now. They are. Believe it or not, you're starting to see Jonathan Huberdeau find his game again. But it's just a matter of the division they're in. You know, you have Edmonton. It's similar to the 80s where you're looking up at the Edmonton Oilers yet again, who have two of the best players to be doing it right now. And in McDavid and Draisaitl, and Vegas is still there too, still a fairly not playing well, but still probably a stronger team than them.
Yeah.
So it sets them up, but I don't know how much of the needle moves for them. I really don't know. They're borderline playoff right now, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even think they'll make it. So it's going to be real interesting to see how this needle moves for Calgary because they're still a long ways away from where they were 3 years ago.
The difference maker for Calgary is going to be in between the pipes with Dustin Wolf kind of really taking the reins lately. But I think fortifying that bottom six is going to make a big difference for them down the line. Looking at Philadelphia's lineup here that I just projected up here, Philadelphia's lineup is going to be ever changing over the course of the next month also because there's rumors that guys like Scott Lawton could be on the out and out with the Philadelphia Flyers being a UFA after this year. He could be trade bait. Rasmus Ristolainen could be trade bait this year with another year left on his contract. And all of a sudden playing great defense on the right-hand side could be a really nice trade piece for a team looking for right-handed help on defense. So Philly might not be done. And I say that because now it kind of makes this lineup a little bit more fluid of ways that you can kind of pair guys off, try new things, see who has chemistry, maybe move Tyson Forster down to the second line, move Andrei Kuzmenko up, or maybe move Konechny up to the first line full time. And, for balance purposes after you get rid of Scott Lawton, there's still ways that this Philadelphia lineup is evolving, but I do ultimately like the Andrei Kuzmenko deal for a guy like Matvei Michkov, who's still trying to get comfortable in the NHL, giving him somebody that is, the same journeyman as him, same countryman as him, I think will ultimately really, really help him as well. Last team I just wanted to talk about was the Dallas Stars with their trade. Looking at how the trade kind of affects them right now, Mikael Granlund slots in very nicely on the second line alongside Mason Marchment and Matt Duchene as well. That's a great looking top six, if you ask me. I think that is a very strong looking top six. And it's just unfortunate that they're playing in the Central Division because the Central might be one of the strongest divisions in the NHL right now. And then looking down at defense, Cody Ceci slotting in fairly nicely as a third pairing defenseman on the Dallas Stars next to Brendan Smith. Overall, I like this deal for Dallas. They're not going to miss the draft picks. They're in win now mode, and they should be in win now mode. And ultimately, I think this trade only gets them that much closer to a Stanley Cup and a Stanley Cup that they are currently missing in their cabinet. And I thought that they were going to be a team that made it last year. I don't know if I have them that much closer, but this certainly does help. Did you like that trade overall, Tom?
I did. And like I said, it makes Dallas better. It makes Dallas deeper. But the thing about Dallas is they've always been fairly deep in the last couple of years. And the job just hasn't gotten done. They gotten to the Western Conference Finals the last 2 years and lost both times in both years where myself, and I'm sure yourself, thought that they were going to get through. And they didn't. And is it? I know I bring up the Hurricanes as like a San Jose Sharks-esque comparison to back in the 2010s, where every year you thought, okay, the Sharks are deep, the Sharks good, the Sharks are going to take it, and the Sharks never took it. And could it very well be the Dallas Stars wearing that hat now, and maybe not the Carolina Hurricanes? Because they keep getting there. And remember, the Sharks got there in 2010 and 2011 and lost to the Chicago Blackhawks and the Vancouver Canucks both of those years. And then the one year they got to the final, they lost to Pittsburgh. If there's ever going to be a year for the Stars to do it, it's got to be this one. The problem with the Stars is you have the Edmonton Oilers in that same conference right there with you. I'm not real worried about Winnipeg. Winnipeg, we got to see what happens with, because a lot of us were riding high in that Winnipeg train last year, and they crashed and burned in that first round. So if there was ever a year, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, where if there was ever a year where I don't know if there was a clear-cut favorite, like 3 years ago, you could make the case that Colorado's your clear-cut favorite. Last year, as much as I didn't want to admit it as a Ranger fan, a lot of the talk was about Florida. This is their year. This year, I don't know if there is a set favorite to me right now for the Stanley Cup. I mean, if you look in the East, people can say whatever you want about Washington. I don't see it. Florida, I think, is eventually going to run out of gas. Toronto, well, you already know. Carolina, the trade's not working out. So then you go out west, and you have Edmonton, and you have Dallas, and you have Winnipeg, and you have Colorado, and you have Vegas. Vegas has won before, but Vegas is not having the greatest of year. Vegas is not having the easiest of times right now. Winnipeg, as we saw last year, they're beatable in the playoffs. We got to see what happens. So it could just be that year, kind of like a 2018 Washington Capitals or a 1999 namesake Dallas Stars, where just the cards line up and this team that had come so close for so many of those years, and that could be applied to Dallas or Edmonton, just goes in and wins it. I would say more similar to 1999, to Dallas Stars in 99 than the 18 Caps, but you get my drift. You understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah. I think what's just more so just baffling to me when thinking about the current standings in the Eastern Conference specifically, and talking about who's the favorite right now for the Stanley Cup, it's still really, really wide open in the East. And I want to paint a picture here real quick. So currently in the second wild card spot, in the last playoff spot, is the Detroit Red Wings with 61 points. The second to last team in the Eastern Conference right now is the Philadelphia Flyers. They are only 6 points back from the Detroit Red Wings. There's really no team in the East right now that is mathematically out of it. Even the Buffalo Sabres, who have 49 points, are technically not mathematically out of this yet. This can break a number of different ways coming out of the Four Nations break, and it is going to be a fun ride, but we are going to see some impulse trades on the Eastern Conference side of things for sure, and it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch, but that's a story for a different day. I mentioned Four Nations Faceoff, so we got to preview this now. We got to talk a little bit about this. The way I want to start talking about this, first of all, I'm super excited to go over these lineups for the Four Nations Faceoff, and I was thinking to myself when setting up for this episode of, just kind of racking my brain of like, all right, I'm probably going to have to create this. I'm probably going to have to create these lines. Nope. Daily Faceoff with the win. Once again, they have lines for us. And just as we've previewed in the past with, conference previews and division previews, I'm going to treat this the same way. These lines are fluid. This is as recent as today, and literally within the hour as well. All is subject to change based on guys either pulling out or anything like that, which I don't see at this point, a day before.
Somebody would have to get hurt in practice. That'd be the only way.
Somebody would have to get hurt in practice, but these are the projected lines and projected starters. We're going to go through the forwards, the defense, and goaltending. If you would like to check out the power play and penalty kill, which I highly recommend, these just look like just pure fantasy right now, and it's so cool to see. Take a little bit of time on your own. Check out dailyfaceoff.com. Check out the power play and penalty kill units if you want to check it out yourself. But looking at Team Finland first on the First line, we're moving from left wing to right wing. You've got Arturi Lekkinen with Alexander Barkov and Mikko Rantanen. On the second line, you got Rupe Hintz with Sebastian Aho and Patrick Laine. On the third line, Teuvo Teravainen with Erik Haula and Joel Armia. And on the fourth line, Eetu Luosterainen with Anton Lundell and Mikael Granlund. Looking at the defense for Finland, you've got Nico Mikkola with Esa Lindell, Juuso Valimaki with Oli Mata, and Urho Vakanainen with Nicholas Mantinpalo alongside him as well. The goaltending for Team Finland in the starter net right now is Juuse Saros, and backing him up is Kevin Lankinen. That's actually a dark horse decent goaltending tandem, if you ask me. I don't think that's going to garner as much attention as it needs. And I just want to mention it here. Looking at Team Sweden next. On the top line for Team Sweden, we've got Philip Forsberg with Elias Pettersson and Adrian Kempe. On the second line, we've got Ricard Raquel with Mika Zibanejad and William Nylander. On the third line, you've got Jesper Bratt with Joel Eriksson Ek and Lucas Raymond. And on the fourth line, you've got Victor Arvidsson with Elias Lindholm and Gustav Nyquist. Looking down at defense for Team Sweden, Victor Hedman is with Jonas Brodin. On the second pairing, Matthias Ekholm and Erik Karlsson. And on the third pairing, Gustav Forsling and Rasmus Dahlin. It's a pretty solid defense, if you ask me, for Team Sweden.
Oh, most definitely.
And between the pipes, the starters net currently belongs to Philip Gustafsson with Linus Olmark backing up. That's a scary good tandem. That's a two-headed monster between the pipes there. That might be the strongest goaltending tandem. Team Canada, looking at them next. Top line, Sam Reinhart with Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner. On the second line, and this is where it just truly becomes fantasy hockey, if you ask me, Sidney Crosby with Nathan McKinnon and Mark Stone. On the third line, you got Brad Marchand with Braden Point and Seth Jarvis. And on the fourth line, Brandon Hagel with Anthony Cirelli and Travis Konechny. Looking at the defense for Team Canada, you've got Devin Taves with Cale Makar. It's almost like they plucked that right from Colorado. On the second pairing, you've got Josh Morrissey with Colton Parayko. And on the third pairing, you've got Shea Theodore with Drew Doughty. And in between the pipes, the starter in a bit of a shock today. They're giving it to Jordan Binnington. And backing him up is the guy who we thought, honestly, going into this tournament would be the starter, Adin Hill. So really, really interesting. That's going to be a talking point in just a minute. Finally, because we're from the United States, we're going to look at the United States last. On the top line, you've got Kyle Connor with Jack Eichel and Matt Tkachuk. On the second line, you've got Jake Gensel with Austin Matthews and Jack Hughes. Interesting that they're playing Jack Hughes on the wing and not up center, but with the center depth that they currently have, it is understandable. On the third line, they've got Matt Boldy with JT Miller and Brady Tkachuk, just pure sandpaper. And on the fourth line, you got Brock Nelson with Vincent Trocheck and Dylan Larkin, or as I like to call it, the center line as of right now. Chris Kreider has been working in reps in place of Dylan Larkin from time to time, so that's going to be something to monitor. Given matchups, maybe Chris Kreider gets a game here or there. Looking at the defense, you've got Jacob Slavin with Adam Fox. On the second pairing, you've got Zach Werenski with Charlie McAvoy. And on the third pairing, Noah Hannafin with Brock Faber. Looking at the goaltending for Team USA, Connor Hellebuck in the starter's net, and backing him up is Jake Ottinger. That might be, if it's not the best goaltending tandem, that is probably a very, very, very close second to Team Sweden, if you ask me. But Tom, there's a lot to digest with this. There's a lot to kind of consider, keep in mind. So I'll start with you. Looking at these lineups, we'll start kind of comparing forwards to defense to goaltending. Who in your mind has the best forward core going into this tournament?
Well, this is kind of a loaded question, and I'm going to explain it to you this way. In terms of 12 forwards and your depth, it's got to be Team USA with your group of your 12 forwards. I think they have the best third and fourth line in the tournament. The problem is this. Your top six, when you line that up with the top six from that country to the north, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to sit here and say that our three best players, probably Austin Matthews, obviously, Jack Eichel, and we'll say Matthew Tkachuk,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
come close to Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and
And
Sidney
Sidney,
Crosby.
yeah, and Sidney Crosby.
It's
And it's
hard.
funny.
Now, I'll say this. I like our third and our fourth lines better than Team Canada's third and fourth lines. But man, oh man, and holy, you know what? I look at the top two lines. Canada and Canada's got Mitch Marner on there. Canada's got Mitch Marner on line one. They got Sam Reinhart, who's a 50-goal scorer on line one, and you got Mark Stone over there as well.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, another kind of dark horse player in this forward core for Team Canada, I don't think Braden Point's getting enough.
And that's another thing, too. But I'm saying, like with Braden Point, you still have some other players down there in those third and fourth lines that might be able to cancel him out. And you could technically, and I don't mean to interrupt you,
you're fine.
You could probably, and it will probably happen, that they'll probably swap Brad Marchand and Mark Stone at some point as well. Because Crosby and Marchand have been great playing together in international tournaments.
And that's true too. I understand why you're playing Mark Stone up there too. Looking at Team Canada overall, there is still some sandpaper in Canada's lineup, and his name is Travis Konechny. And I think he's going to give Team USA and Team Sweden and Team Finland some real problems. And same with Brad Marchand. You know, both Travis Konechny and Brad Marchand are cut from the same cloth. They are guys of pure work ethic. They are going to outwork every guy on the ice. They're going to give 110%. They're going to burn themselves out for 45 seconds and really frustrate teams and get down in the trenches and get down in the dirty areas and not be afraid to get knocked down. And they're bulldogs. You know, they want to be thrown around.
Looking at honorable mention of Team Finland. I like what they have too.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking at Team Finland also, they really do have an underrated forward core as well, highlighted by Alexander Barkov, Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, Teuvo Teravainen, even, who's had a fairly nice season as well. But looking at that fourth line, I really like Team Finland's fourth line of Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell. So there's a connection there from Florida. And then adding Mikael Granlund onto that line as well, I think is a really, really nice line. One thing to kind of monitor here for Team Finland is Erik Haula is coming back from injury from the last few games for the New Jersey Devils. I think he's going to provide some good relief in the faceoff circle. He's very responsible in the faceoff circle. He's going to probably be the guy that Finland is going to rely on in desperation moments to win a quick face-off to maintain possession in a close game. But I like Team Finland's forward core. I don't think they're getting enough attention in this tournament. Team Sweden's forward core, I don't think, is the highlight of this team. I think Team Sweden is more of a defensive team, if you ask me. They have some firepower with Elias Pettersson, Philip Forsberg, William Nylander, Jesper Bratt, and Lucas Raymond, just to name a few. But they're not as strong as the cores of Finland and USA and Canada. But looking at Team USA, I'm going to say that Team USA, surprisingly, I think, has the more complete forward core. And I say that because it feels very cohesive going from line to line to line to line. Your top two lines, even though, yes, they are a step below Team Canada's top two lines. But where Team USA really gains is in those bottom two lines. And those bottom two lines are going to be out every single minute that line 1 and 2 of Team Canada are out. 100%. You're going to have Matt Boldy, JT Miller, and Brady Tkachuk out there whenever Connor McDavid is on the ice, whenever that Nathan McKinnon's on the ice. And same with Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, and Dylan Larkin as well. I think Team USA's forward core might be the most complete out of the teams in the tournament. They might not be the most exciting, but they are the most complete, if you ask me. Tom, let's turn it over to you on this one. Looking at the defense in the tournament, which team kind of excites you the most? Who do you think has the strongest defensive core?
Well, let's just say who has the weakest one, and that would be Finland. So let's throw them out.
Yeah.
See, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Because you look at Sweden, you have Victor Hedman and Erik Karlsson there, and Rasmus Dahlin, and Gus Forsling, all Matthias Ekholm, they're all Jonas Brodin, all good players.
Yeah.
Now, if this was before Sunday, I would say Team USA because they had. Now you talk about Canada, and let's just be fair. Canada has Cale Makar; he's the best out of any of them.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. We can't beat that bush around. Alex Pietrangelo dropped out for Canada, and Drew Doughty slotted in. And Doughty's been logging hella minutes for LA right now. Not showing up on the stat sheet, but Doughty can still play at a pretty elite level.
Oh, yeah.
But the fact is, Canada's D revolved around Cale Makar, but now they have Drew Doughty there too. Now, before Sunday, you would say, okay, well, we have Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox, and Charlie McAvoy. Quinn Hughes decided not to play. So now Adam Fox can definitely run a power play. Charlie McAvoy, not having the greatest year in the world, is still a pretty halfway decent player. And you have Zach Werenski, who's having one of the best years he's had. So right now, if I'm going to rank it, I'm going to say, I still would say the U.S. probably has the best D-core. But the problem is they would have had the best with Quinn Hughes. Now you have Fox and McAvoy with an honorable nod to Werenski. We'll go over to Team Canada. You have Makar and Doughty, and you can give the nod to Josh Morrissey as well, who's kind of the same Zach Werenski role for them. And Shea Theodore is no pushover either.
And neither is Colton Parayko. I mean, he is a brick wall standing between a lot of forwards, and he's a lot of dude to try to push around in front of the net.
So if you go to Sweden, you have Hedman and Karlsson, and their D is still pretty good, but I would still probably rank them below the U.S. and Canada. So right now, just with the season Werenski is having, because he surpassed any point total he's ever had, I'm going to give it to Team USA. But it's not by a lot. It's not by a lot over Canada. It really isn't. It really isn't. With them getting Doughty and us losing Hughes, it's a lot closer now. It really is a lot closer. And Doughty has been there before for Team Canada. He knows what it takes. A lot of these other guys have played in the World Juniors. Probably some have played in the World Championships. I don't know how many off the top of my head, and I'm not going to waste my time looking it up right now. But this is the best on best, and Doughty has been there before.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I think not a lot of people are really kind of taking enough stock into with Team Canada is there's one thing that Team Canada really has that works in their favor over competitive team like Team USA, and that is international experience. Now, yes, Team USA has players from the US developmental who, were kind of used to the US developmental program and the IIHF and, playing World Juniors, but it's a totally different animal, when you compare to the international play that some of these players saw prior to the NHL saying we're not going to the Olympics anymore. The experience that guys like Sidney Crosby, Brad Marchand, and Drew Doughty are bringing to this team as former members of Team Canada from back in the day, I think is not being sold enough for Canada's favor here. Thinking about it from my answer for who I think has the best D-core. I hate to say it. Yeah, unfortunately, we got to eliminate Team Finland from this conversation. They are just a few ticks below every other team. Still talented players, absolutely, but they do not compare to the likes of Team Sweden, Canada, and US. I'm upset that Team USA will not have Quinn Hughes, and it really does upset me that this decision was made for Quinn Hughes just not to play. And I don't know if that was his decision. I don't know if it was Vancouver's decision, or if it was both mutual interest decision. But either way,
it actually was his decision, I read, which I'm not going to rant too long about this. It irks me.
Yeah.
Because this is his first time This is his audition for the Olympics next year. This is his time. He was going to lead that D. He was going to quarterback the power play. He was the best guy. There were rumors saying that he was a little upset about not getting a letter on his jersey. Well, he just did himself no favors for the Olympics next year with getting a letter. But you want to know what irks me more? And I'll leave it at this. Sidney Crosby has won every possible thing you can for Team Canada. Was left up to him whether he wanted to play or whether he didn't. They were even told Canada's FO was even told to be put on watch for him to say, I'm not going to play. He's hurt. He missed some games. And there he is, showing up to play.
Yeah. And it just shows kind of respect to the international play and the respect of international play. I could understand from the standpoint of Quinn Hughes feeling like he was snubbed. He's currently the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, and to be snubbed for a letter, I can understand being a little bit irked by that, but you still got to be professional about something like that. If that is, if that speculation is anything to be believed with that, I was a little bit upset in my own opinion, in my own bias. I think Austin Matthews is a perfectly fine choice to be captain of Team USA. I am personally a little bit irked that Quinn Hughes wasn't considered not only for captaincy, but also even a letter. So I do agree in that regard. I think Quinn Hughes is a bit of a snub for a letter, and I can understand why he could potentially be irked by that. Whether that's the reason why he didn't play in the tournament or not, that's left to be seen, and not enough for me to speculate on. But I would have said that if from my armchair general manager's position, that Quinn Hughes would probably deserve a letter on my part. In terms of who has, back to the conversation of who has the best defense going into this tournament, though, I'll say for my money, I think that Team USA probably has the better defense right now. Canada and Sweden, in my mind, honestly, are tied because, again, Sweden's defense isn't being talked about enough. Victor Hedman and Jonas Brodin is a fantastic combination. Matthias Ekholm and Erik Karlsson, another great combination. Gustav Forsling and Rasmus Dahlin. This is Rasmus Dahlin's first real taste of international play, and him playing alongside Gustav Forsling. This is his audition to play second or first defensive pairing minutes in the Olympics next year, if you ask me. I think Sweden has a defense that not enough people are talking about that could be a difference maker in this tournament, and why Sweden, in my mind, is a real dark horse to possibly go far in this tournament and possibly even win this tournament as well. Now, speaking of another reason why they could as well, goaltending. So, Tom, I'll ask you here, who do you think has the best goaltending going into this tournament?
I mean, homer alert here. You have Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger in net. It's Team USA. Yeah. It's not even close. Nobody comes close. If Markstrom were healthy for Sweden, maybe. Saros is having a garbage year for Nashville. Canada didn't have much to pick from. Logan Thompson, whatever, between him and Pete DeBoer, that seems childish, but whatever. Mike Keenan used to like to cut Steve Yzerman for no reason at the Old Canada Cups. Nobody really knows why. But at the end of the day, it would work. I don't know if it'll work this time. Maybe it will. But yeah, it's Team USA. Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. I mean, this is almost akin to having Mike Richter and John Van Beesbrook in net back in the day.
Yeah.
Or even Jonathan Quick and Ryan Miller. U.S. has always had strong goaltending and best on best, except for the 06 Olympics with Rick Mr. Olympics DiPietro in net.
This is true. I will say this with Team USA. I mean, Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger is certainly the home run answer for sure, and a surefire bet for who has the strongest goaltending in this tournament. That being said, Team Sweden, even without Jacob Markstrom in net, having Philip Gustafsson and Linus Ullmark, I think is damn near comparable to Team USA in terms of pedigree. Connor Hellebuck, Linus Ullmark, both former Vezina winners. Both guys who still play at an elite level. Philip Gustafsson is an elite level goaltender playing for Minnesota right now. And it's a coin flip for Team Sweden of who takes the starter's net. There are games where Linus Olmar can take the starter's net. There are games where Philip Gustafsson takes the starter's net. And I think either which way, Team Sweden is happy as a clam with either of those two players in net. For Team USA, Jake Ottinger has been a rock for the Dallas Stars this year. Connor Hellebuck has been far and away the best goaltender in the NHL, and one of the biggest reasons why Winnipeg, in my mind, right now is probably the favorite for the Stanley Cup right now. If you ask me, going back to that conversation from before, but yeah, I think it's Team USA and Team Sweden. I think after that, I think Team Finland gets a little bit of a nod for me because Saros, even though he's having a weak year for Nashville, is still a very good goaltender. Kevin Lankinen is having a great year as well. And then beyond that, Team Canada. That is the real X factor for me, is between the pipes for Team Canada, between Jordan Binnington and Adin Hill. Both are more than capable goaltenders, but they are not Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Philip Gustafsson, Linus Olmark, Drew Saros, Kevin Lankinen even. At least this year, in my mind. I mean, Adin Hill has been perfectly fine for Vegas. Jordan Binnington has been all right for St. Louis, but that is a major weak spot for Team Canada right now. Do you agree there, Tom?
It is a major weak spot, but the problem is that what we've learned in the past about Team Canada is this: when it comes to international tournaments and when it comes to when the tough gets going, the going get tough. I mean, there were times in the past, the old Canada Cups, where the Soviets may have probably had better goaltending than them. But if there's one thing Canada's not afraid to do, they'll lock the center of the ice up. They'll play any way you want. And they won't be afraid to keep double and triple shifting their best players if they have to. And it's one thing that really worries me about Canada when it comes to the U.S. playing against them. It's, can the goaltending withstand guys like Makar and McKinnon and McDavid and Marner and Reinhart and Crosby and you name it. You name it. Can they withstand what Canada has? Because make no mistake about it, if games get tight in this tournament, John Cooper will double and triple shift Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon and Brad Marchand, and will have no bones about doing it either.
Yeah. I mean, in international play, you kind of have to. If you want to be the best of the best and win a best on best, you've got to put your best out there. And yeah, I don't think he's going to bat an eye at that, and damn the expense for other teams that are going to need those players down the stretch as well. That's the risk that you take when it comes to international play. It's just how it is. Tom, I know you're especially excited for this tournament because you're actually going to be shipping up to Boston, aren't you?
Yes, and I'll actually be attending both games on Monday. I just bought tickets the other day to Canada versus Finland. So I'm very excited to see it. I mean, I could see a power play with Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Connor McDavid, and Sidney Crosby on it, all playing together in a best-on-best tournament in a game that may very well mean a lot depending on where the standings are. And then our own country, the USA, will be seeing them play Sweden on that Monday night tilt, which may be just as important. These games could be very well semifinal games without there being official semifinals. So they could be as close to like a Game 7 playoff game that I'll be able to see live. I'm very excited for it. I've been to Boston many times, great city.
Yeah.
Been to the arena, not for a long time though. It's been over 20 years since I've been inside the TD Garden. So I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be really cold up there, but I don't really care. I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
Yeah. And for those of you that are going to the tournament, have a ton of fun, take pictures, take video, enjoy the experience, take in the atmosphere, talk to new fans, and, just keep growing the game of hockey, just have fun with it. That's what this is all about. This is world building. This is all what this is. And that's the importance of this. And it's all about the friends you make along the way. If you ask me.
So I'll ask you, you have a prediction for this one?
Well, that was actually going to be my segue into our question of the day. So perfect for that one. So, well, I'll just hit both of us with this one. Since you asked me first, I'll answer the question first for once, which is who ultimately wins this tournament? Who wins that shiny new trophy that was unveiled today too? Oh man, this is not an easy choice at all because all four teams are honestly so good. And I know that just sounds like the Paula Abdul on American Idol answer for sure. But For my money, I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to say Team USA. I think that they're a very strong and complete team. Even without Quinn Hughes, I think that they're still a team that should not be messed with. I think defense, goaltending is going to make a huge difference for them when going up against superstars for Team Canada. And Canada is certainly going to make it interesting too. And look out for Team Sweden. Sweden is a dark horse in my mind that could steal some games as well. Tom, what about you?
Well, I like your prediction, but a lot of people are not going to like mine.
Oh boy.
I think about this, and I think about what goes into these tournaments now, and what's gone on in the last 20 years since 1998 with Team Canada, and they don't mess around anymore. And especially they had a little hiccup in 06 in the Olympics, but they don't mess around anymore. And we know the goaltending's weak. And we know their D might not be the best in the tournament, but it's still pretty good. But all I keep thinking about is you talk about four lines, you talk about good goaltending, you talk about this, you talk about that. And all I keep thinking about is back to 1987 when Gretzky and Lemieux were out there together. And now back then you had Gretzky, Lemieux, and Messier. And now this time around you have McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby. And you have Cale Makar on D, was equal to probably Ray Bourque and Paul Coffey together. And that was their first D pair back in 1987. And the goaltending's bad. The goaltending's not the greatest. It's not. But you look at what that team has, especially in the top six and your top pair D-man, and you look at them. And if you're up 2-1 late in the third period and they're going to keep pressing, are you going to be able to stop everything they have to come at you? Team Canada is going to be a team that if you want to beat them, you're going to need to be up by probably 3, because I don't even think 2 is going to work with what they have. And I just don't know. And I love Team USA. I'm from here. I'm not going to go any more into it. But I don't know if trying to emulate Mike Richter again in 1996 is going to be able to happen again this time. That 96 Canadian team was good. But they were missing Ray Bourque, and they were missing Paul Kariya, and they were missing the best player in the world at the time in Mario Lemieux. They're not missing anybody this time, outside of Alex Pietrangelo, who Drew Doughty swapped in for. It's even 1-for-1 split. I just don't know. Especially with Quinn Hughes being out for Team USA, I don't know if their goaltending and their third and fourth lines are going to be able to outdo Canada. So as much as people hate, and I hope I'm wrong here, as much as people don't want to hear me say it, I got to say what it is with Quinn Hughes being out. My prediction was USA once he went out and Crosby decided he was going to elect to play for Canada. It's Team Canada. Sorry, guys. I can't. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to say that, but it's true right now. It's true. And I like what the U.S. has, and I like this team, and this might be the best team we had since 96. But I just don't know if this is a team that's going to be able to put 2 or 3 up on Canada and be able to weather the storm afterwards.
I get where you're coming from, and it's a perfectly fine guess too. It's a coin flip in this tournament. There's justifiable reason for any 4 of these teams to win this tournament. And I think that's honestly why you call it a best on best. But as always, guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know. Comment down below. Who do you think is going to win the Four Nations Faceoff? What are you most looking forward to coming up in the Four Nations Faceoff? What are you looking forward to coming out of the break as well as we get back into the NHL regular season? Let us know. Comment down below. Drop a like if you also like our content as well. And make sure you subscribe down below to youtube.com/NHL on i80 Sports. Hit the bell notifications so that way you know when our content goes live. But for now, be excited for the tournament. It's going to be a lot of fun. And enough talking from us. Time to enjoy this. But until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been our Four Nations preview here on i80 Sports.